That way you're not. There's Anna. Good morning.
Do you want,
Yeah, we can do a roll call. Katarina is set, and then we have our new board member, Scott Little, that will introduce and do an oath. We didn't have a chance to get together.
nice. Maybe we're ready. Are we ready? Okay, awesome. We'll go ahead and start today. Welcome, everybody. We're going to go ahead and start with the roll call.
Katarina, would you mind?
Yes. Chair Sherry Orange,
Yep.
Vice Chair Daniel Gibbons, Anna Barbieri,
Yeah.
Cindy Sharkey, Diane Turner,
Excuse, yeah.
Eric Barney,
Yes, Eric's here.
Keith Dustin, here, but
I think they're all muted.
that works. Lori Stringer, Eric, Patrick Schaefer,
Yeah.
Robert Pignon, Scott Bracken,
Yeah.
Scott Little,
Here.
Tessa Sitzler,
Looks like she having trouble logging in. I'll have to send it to her.
Tom DeSimon. Steve,
Touch is on now.
Is she on?
Katarina, you might get touch is on now.
yes.
Okay, thank you so much. We definitely have a quorum, so we're going to get started on this meeting of the Wasatch Waste and Recycle District Board of Trustees, Monday, August 22nd, 2022, the district offices. First item on our agenda is to welcome our new board member, Scott Little from White City Metro Council. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
If you want to go ahead and do the oath of office now.
You bet. Katarina, are you set?
Oh,
You've been practicing and ready to go.
Please repeat after me. I, Scott Little,
I, Scott Little,
having been appointed to the office
having been appointed to the office
of Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District
of Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District
Board of Trustees,
Board of Trustees,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of this state,
and the Constitution of the state,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and I will discharge the duties in the office of the Thank you.
Yay.
You're just clapping. Did I repeat it?
I'm practicing. And here's this oath. Well done.
Good job, guys. Welcome to the board, and we're excited to get to know you and serve with you. Welcome to the party here. Number 2 is consent item. 2.1, June 27th, 2022 board meeting minutes. Is there any questions or adjustments to the minutes from anyone? If not, I look for a motion for approval. I'll make an motion for approval. Second. Perfect, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposed? Okay, that passes. Move on to item number 3. Sorry, it's when our meeting is open for public comments. We welcome any public and all public that would like to share with us to comment at our board meetings, and this is the time that they're welcome to do that. Do you know of any public comment?
We did not receive any, however, we've been having technical issues of receiving outside emails as well as sending outside emails. So the hope is that anyone that did have comment would have contacted us by last Thursday,
see anyone logging in, right? No.
They would be able to get to us through our website, and we did not receive anything.
Okay, awesome. Well, we will assume that no one wants to comment, but we always invite the public to participate in that. So we'll move on to item number 4, business items. So 4.1 is adoption of resolution 4415, expressing appreciation for retiring board member Phil Cardenas. Pam.
Yes. So, Phil joined us last August, so he barely made it to a year of service, but it is, customary that we have you as a board adopt a resolution to recognize the service that each board member has provided, for the district and the residents. So this is what's before you. I did reach out to Phil. He wasn't able to get here today, but I will plan on going to the White City Metro Township Council, the next one they have, and recognize him. I usually do a customary gift from Harley on my behalf, actually. I'm not district sponsored.
You take him on a ride?
Yeah. If you'd like to go to the canyon, I'm happy.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate Phil's participation, and we'll look forward to you sharing that with them, and we appreciate your efforts on that. I would look for a motion to adopt this resolution.
Madam Chair, I'll move adoption of resolution 4415, expressing appreciation for Phil Cardenas.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, perfect.
Madam Chair, can I note that Robert Pignon has logged on?
Oh, yep, Robert is on. Okay, perfect. Welcome, Robert. Okay, again, thanks, Phil, for his service. We'll move on to 4.2, request approval of human resources policy amendments related to pay structures.
All right. So, I have Ashley here with us, and just so you know, Rachel Anderson, our legal counsel, also reviewed this, policy that's before you. We have a situation, and I don't know if you want to explain how, the employee reached out to you.
Yeah, of course. So we have a quality assurance inspector who acts in as kind of like a lead equipment operator during the scrap program. And he came to me with some concerns that obviously a lead equipment operator is making more than, his position, and he kind of acts in and is assigned certain duties, but he's not, making that pay rate. So I got with Pam, and we spoke with Melissa Cotter, our compensation consultant, and came up with this differential pay that she recommended.
Yeah, this would be the kind of the smoothest way to make sure that we are compensating employees that might be acting into a role that is a greater pay rate than them. We didn't have this avenue previously. And so, I'm glad that our employee brought this forward so that we could bring it before you. These are rare cases. I can only think of one other case that this would pop up with the leaf bag and Christmas tree collection, where we have equipment operator that would step into that lead role, and this gives us that opportunity to compensate them. There is a minimum number of days that they need to work in that spot, and that's 45 days minimum, and then up to a maximum of 6 months. So the reason why the thought of having a maximum is that if it's more than that, we need to reevaluate to say, do we need to reclassify the position from a regular equipment operator to a lead? Or is that need there? So that's what this is in place for. There's seldom times that a lead equipment operator would act in for a supervisor. Generally, if the supervisor's out, that is covered by another supervisor or a manager stepping in. So we haven't had those cases popped up, but if they ever did, we have this avenue to compensate. So it is an hourly rate of $1.50 per hour. That would be the increased rate. That made more sense and seemed more equitable from what our compensation consultant mentioned. So that's what we're drawing with and have before you. The employee has to be a merit employee, if that helps. I don't know if you have any questions We also put a clause in here that overtime would be on, you know, on top of that 150, so that goes into their hourly rate, and then the overtime is calculated on that. And then we wanted to make sure we had the retroactive phase in there, because we may not come to understanding of somebody truly acting in until after the fact. So we want to be able to have that avenue as well. I'm hoping for adoption, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer any. Ashley can answer. Paul can address.
My biggest concern would be if we put $1.50 in the policy, eventually that becomes insufficient. I guess the other thing would be, are all of our pay grades sufficiently close enough that covers them all?
Good question. So those questions would be answered in our proposed budget, because Melissa is conducting the salary market survey analysis that you all approved her to do as part of the 2023 budget proposal. And there are findings that will be coming back to show that, you know, the ranges will need to move. So her thought was, is that $1.50 can stay in place because the range will move, and then the $1.50 would be on top of where that employee is currently at in that respective salary range. I hope that makes sense. So,
If I understand Scott's concern, it's that in 5 years,
right,
$1.50 may be an insignificant, you know, delta, but I think the main point is we get it above the rate, and then, of course, we could amend, the board could amend down the road. Scott, does that answer you?
I mean, eventually it evaporates.
good point. I mean, and maybe we could put in there, as determined each on an annual basis, just to allow some flexibility, and then we as staff would have that flexibility, and put it into a procedure, so to speak, so that it's set on an annual basis. Certainly want to plug in any flexibility we could.
I'm wondering, one, how do you, I think you probably have a great way of tracking when those hours are spent doing these supplemental jobs. But number two, is there any way that you could put that in the paycheck as a separate line item, that this is supplemental? Because sometimes people, you know, I'm only making this much, but they have to, it's always a nice reminder, no, you're being supplemented this much. Could you make that a separate line item?
Yeah, so there will be a different pay code in payroll that will break it out on their paycheck when they see it.
Perfect.
That overtime rate plus their regular pay.
Okay.
This is Councilman.
Would it be that difficult to just review that $1.50 at, maybe an annual basis, and then just amend it if it makes sense, rather than to put something in there? I mean, I think having a some certain in there is kind of good, because then that's something that the employees can look at and they know exactly what it is. The question I had was, are we limited by the number of people we can have in a certain position in a given year?
Good question. So we have FTE that we ask for your approval, and anytime we add FTEs, we bring that for you as the next budget year or mid-year request from the from staff. And currently we have 96 FTEs. And so within that realm, I have the authority to reclassify positions. That doesn't necessarily have to come before you as a board.
Mm-hmm.
Although if there's going to be a budget increase and a budget impact, I would bring that before you. But there have been times where an equipment operator did need to be reclassified as a lead equipment operator because we didn't have enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so those have not necessarily come before you. It's just an overall FTE count, if that makes sense.
Somewhat, because I'm new at this, but the concern that I would have is that this could be used to in essence, move a lot of people into positions that maybe aren't budgeted for or that aren't anticipated, without officially doing that. But you can move someone for 6 months, then you can move someone else for 6 months, and so in essence, create a bunch of positions that maybe aren't approved, and I don't know whether that's a concern or not, but that.
I would just say that we don't have that need to have people serve in this capacity very often. It was mainly through scrap, which is 6 months a year, that seasonal service. Or as I mentioned, the seasonal service with leaf bags and Christmas tree. So I don't know that there would be those issues that would pop up, but certainly I would bring them back if that is a concern and it becomes.
Yeah, I think that, I understand your concern. I think that your concern is abusing policy, to use it to keep people bumping up. And so I think that just from this level, we just need to make sure that there's always an accounting of it, right? We're understanding that there's an accounting of it, so just always make sure that there's checks and balances in that accounting to make sure that that's not happening, so that, I understand I think it should never happen, but it's always important to put in place things that make sure it doesn't happen. And I totally understand the $1.50 concern. It's funny, I was just thinking this in Utah, I was thinking, I made $10 an hour like 20 years ago, and I still know kids that are starting at $10 an hour. But anyway, we don't, $1.50 doesn't change much in our state, it seems like. But, concern is valid, but I do think that there needs to be a dollar figure in here. And it's easily changed for the board if we need to at some point to adjust that and move that. So we always keep that in mind, it's not equitable anymore. But I think it's a good starting point for the $1.50, just to make sure there's a hard number in there.
And I was gonna say, we could just tie it in with the budget, I mean, review that every year with the budget, and then also at that time, or at year end, we could give a recap, we did it for this many positions, and just recap it once a year.
Just an accounting of it.
Yeah, so everyone would know.
If it was a line item, that's something the employees could go look at or be aware of.
Yeah.
And tie it into this project.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we could give a reporting, no problem.
Yeah, I think
Perfect.
that's all.
We did it for these
Oversight.
2 employees, and these 2 programs, and these 3 employees, or however many
Yeah.
it is.
I just don't like having it too much flexibility on that, because in my mind, it is a budget issue, and if it's a budget issue, it needs to come back before the board to change. So I like that it's $1.50, and I love that there's just an accounting of it, and if you get to the point where like, it just doesn't help them at all, $1.50. Right now, in my opinion, $1.50 doesn't help them do anything.
We can certainly change that. Melissa said $1.50 or $2, so
I
we
think
can
it's,
certainly change it.
yeah, I think it's a good starting point, $1.50, and we see how it rolls. If there's some, advice, just like we've always done as we move forward, there's salary changes constantly, so we figure it out. How do you, are you guys good with that?
Would it make sense to tie that to the budget, to where we budget a certain amount for that, and we put in policy that that's available, provided that we have budgeted funds in that area? Because I could see this being an area that we end up going over whatever is budgeted for that, but maybe I don't understand where that fits in on the budget.
Wages and salaries.
Yeah, wages and salaries, and I think we budget for scrap. I mean, for that program, we budget and we have temporary positions in there. And a lot of times we have not been able to fill the positions or get the help we need. And so we require people, and we kind of lead to this position that we're in. And so we view it, I mean, when I look at it, I look at wages. I mean, I can look at it independently and in each segment. But I look at it too, big picture, what's our total wages, whether it's temporary or FTE, because we already do that, I mean, and look at it in total, and I think we're okay from a budget perspective, unfortunately, because we have so many temporary positions unfilled in this program. And so that really hasn't been a concern as far as not having those funds available, because we've had unfilled positions and people step up, and then I think there's some overtime also. So I think I always view this, I kind of need to look at it in the aggregate or in total from a budget perspective. as we, you know, maybe under one position, but we're gonna be all over in another one.
Yeah.
But it always balances out.
Yeah.
In fact, we've been underexpended.
Yeah, and it gives us some flexibility too. So, but with that said,
This is-
I go in for each position. Our wage, our employee budget is based upon position, based upon projected hours. And so it's that specific, but once we get in actuality, our world doesn't work real tight with our budget sometimes. And so we like to have some of that flexibility or ability to make changes.
Eric, Barney, Board Member Barney has a question, I think Keith Duesman as well.
Okay, Board Member Barney, would you like to go first?
Yes. Yes, thank you. So first off, I think this is a good idea to compensate employees for extra work that they're doing above and beyond their normal job description. I guess my question is around the implementation of the program and clearly defining what constitutes additional job duties. Are there specific roles that we know of, which I've heard a few mentioned here, that we're wanting to apply this to, or is this just open to interpretation of what additional job duties is? My long-term concern is that this becomes a point of contention among employees about, well, I'm doing something extra, but I'm not getting compensated. So where's the line? And are our job descriptions clearly enough defined that we can avoid any misperceptions among the employee population?
Good question.
Yeah.
So, very good questions, I appreciate that. So we do have very clear job descriptions, and for the lead equipment operator, there are specific duties that they are, basically assigning the routes to their group, their work group, and the scrap program does need that lead out there in the field to navigate, help the employees navigate the daily workload. And that is what this particular employee has been doing, fulfilling that role. So I feel like the job descriptions are pretty clear. And goes and speaks to why I wanted to have a time limit of how long they're doing this, because there are times when a lead equipment operator is off for vacation or sick, and so another equipment operator has to step in for the day. So obviously, we wouldn't want to have that kind of chaotic administrative function of having to make this happen for a day or two, or even a week.
Even a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it has to be 45-day minimum. I don't know if that answered all of your questions, Board Member Barney?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And, Board Member Zussman.
Board Member Duesman, you have a comment?
Yes, I do. I have to say that most of the in-person conversation is first of all is a little bit off unless you're very close to a mic. I would suggest that everybody speak up just a little bit because some of the conversation was garbled. But my question that I have to ask is, what positions are we designating, or is this a vacancy where somebody steps in to fill that position because it's a vacancy while the job is being posted? And then second, as far as just a comment, is that if it is a vacant position and this person is picking up those extra duties, I would believe that we would not have to make any budget adjustments or even budget money for this type of activity, since that position is vacant and there's already dollars built into that position that's being backfilled or acting in positions. So what positions is this going to address? If I could get that answer, and we can kind of move from there.
Yeah, the first, 9.9.3.1, it says positions such as a lead equipment operator, supervisor, or manager. Should we just clarify that those are the positions, or should we leave such as?
Well, are these the only positions that you're identifying? Are there other positions that beyond those three? So.
I guess, The only thing we could add in there, well, actually, no, I don't think there are any other.
So should we take out
Positions.
such as, and we just make it, that
Sure.
those are the only three positions?
We can
that it
certainly
applies
take
to?
out the such as, if that helps.
Because then it would just apply to those three positions only.
Right, because I think some of the previous conversation, it was like somebody steps in and does something, but again, it's for a minimum of 45-day period. And if it's only those three positions, you know, if they're vacant for 45 days, then that's an opening, I would assume, rather
Right.
than somebody's taking FMLA or they're on vacation for 45 days. Yeah.
Got it. So yeah, I like the suggestion, we can take out the such as, and we will do that if.
Yeah,
that
because
helps.
I think that, yeah, some of the conversation is if you remove the such as and just those three positions, then you hard code the backfill positions or the acting in positions.
I would agree with Keith on this one. That was one of the concerns that I had, was simply that it felt really open and vague, and I wasn't sure if that was intentional or if there really were only these three positions.
Yeah, good questions, we can change that, no problem.
Can I just ask, is this just to have someone fill in for an existing position, or does this allow us to create new positions that we fill in this way?
It's a good question, because that's something that we are evaluating for the scrap program for next year, is because the proposal that we will bring before you in September includes 3 full-time driver positions for scrap, so that we don't have to pull people off of the residential routes to cover scrap. And we are evaluating if one of those positions should be a lead equipment operator, so it would be 2 equipment operators and then a lead. So that's the piece that we are evaluating and want to bring back to you for September. So very good question.
It feels more like this is just kind of helps us bridge the gap until we can find all that information, so we can make sure we know exactly what pool we need for scrap and things like that. But if we're pulling people out, it allows them to receive compensation for additional duties.
Correct.
That's how we figure that out.
And in all honesty, I think this will probably be temporary, because I think that, I'm leaning towards we need a lead equipment operator, not just for scrap, but for all of our seasonal services, because this is gonna bleed over, from when scrap ends to the leaf bag and Christmas tree this year. We have a driver that does step up as a lead, and we need to make sure that he is compensated for that, because that program those 2 combined goes a minimum of 45 days. So, if that helps. So I see it being kind of temporary, but we have no avenue to compensate this person right now. Will it be needed in the future? I think time will tell as we continue to evolve with the services that we have and trying to right-size our resources.
I think the example of FMLA is really good, that's potentially 12 weeks. If you have someone out for whatever reason on FMLA, that you don't need to hire the position, you actually, you need to keep the spot. Have someone come in there, that's the longer than the 45 days, but definitely less than the 180, and that is per year, I believe, on limit. So, I would still lean to just making that $1.50 part of a budget line item. But I don't know, to see if others agree with me or not.
Yeah.
Are you good with it just being a budget accounting issue?
I would stick it in there as a line item that we can just review at each budget, each year. If the employees want to know what that happens to be, it will be in there. It should, I think, a line item that also adds to that account, the reporting at the end of the, as we go through next year's budget and so on.
Makes it very clean.
Okay, is there anyone else with comments or questions? Okay, well, I would look for a motion or some way to move forward on this.
Let me see if I get this right.
Were we gonna do a motion to amend first?
Well,
Yeah, and you're-
I would move that we approve whatever, let's see, where we at? The HR policy, section 993, will strike the such as and put in of to specify those specific three positions, and that we set the pay differential in the annual budget for review.
Second that.
Currently it's $1.50.
And yes, and we'll.
We put a range. That would make more sense to put maybe a range or something that would be appropriate for that thing. Just because then you're not, having to come back and say, well, this isn't quite enough, we need to change it again. That's gonna be my question to you guys, and we'll change it in the budget process. But it makes more sense, when you do have a policy, you don't wanna add that detail to then stick it to something that won't work later on.
Plus, it's just,
I'd rather see it be the some certain, because then the employees know what
Know what it
it's
is.
gonna
Yep.
be, and it isn't.
I agree,
Because otherwise, it's always gonna be
negotiable.
the top, or you're gonna have to negotiate. And it can always come back to a meeting, if the $1.50 doesn't work, we can always
yeah,
amend that.
So add $1.50,
okay.
period.
Thank you.
How's that for you, Tara, with you?
I would just suggest on the language, if it were me rewriting it, I would say, when they are assigned to take on additional job duties of one of the following positions,
Okay.
colon, and then list them.
You're
Wait,
not
this
trying
is,
to-
can,
Verbiage is, that's fine by me.
Okay.
so can we just had a lot of discussion in the middle of a motion. Can we restate the motion before it gets seconded and voted on?
Yeah.
You can do that?
Okay, the motion before us is that we approve the pay differential for acting in positions, a 9.9.3.1, change the language that says such as to
Additional job duties of one of the following positions, and then strike such.
additional job duties of one of the following positions, colon, lead equipment operator, supervisor, or manager.
Exactly.
And we will keep the $1.50 per hour. Do we need any language in there? You just know it's part of the budgetary process. Do we have to put language in there?
Set the pay differential
Your direction.
in the budget. And currently set everyone
The
there.
district sets a pay differential in the budget for the amount of $1.50 per hour. Does that is that clear for everyone? Okay, so that's the motion, and I would like a second, if anyone would like to second that.
I'll
I'll
second.
second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, that passes, and we'll move forward with that. Awesome. Thank you guys for that, fantastic. Okay, we'll move on to item 4.3, review of the 2022 second quarter financial report.
Here we go again, so, the financial information. But, this is for the 6 months ended June 30th, 2022. And we compare really versus the prior year and then versus our budget, which is the annual budget. So when we look at those columns across on these next three sheets, the current year-to-date numbers in 2022, that's what we spent for 6 months through the end of June. The budget's in the next column, that's for the full year. And then the budget less the current year, so that shows us the difference in what we have remaining. The percent of budget, and then the prior year-to-date, so for the prior period last year as a comparison. And we keep this in the same format. And so as far as revenues go, they increased $145,000 from 2021 to 2022. And the increase was primarily due to a loss on sale of assets that we recorded in 2021. That was $99,000. And also in 2022, there were increases in residential waste collection fees of $72,000 and green curbside fees of $59,000, partly offset by an increased loss on investments of $97,000. And so, big picture, our residential waste collection fees are up some, green curbside fees are up some, and, our investments had a decrease or, didn't perform as well as prior years. And then when we go down through here, just, a couple other things, we have a category down there, miscellaneous revenues, and that's primarily late fees and glass collections. And then recycling revenue, every once in a while, we'll get to some amounts in there. Right now, we're currently paying a cost per ton to process recycling revenue, so there's no revenue incoming from recycling. But our total revenues there, 11 million through 6 months. Last year, just a little under 11 million. So any questions on revenues? Okay, we'll move on to the next one. This is our personnel expenses. Total personnel expenses for 2022 increased $342,000 from 2021, primarily due to increased wages of $303,000. And so that's really almost all of that increase are increased wages. We'll talk a little bit more about wages a little later. We have some historical data that we'll share, but those are going up. We anticipated them to go up. When we look at the budget still right now, as far as wages go, we're about 45% of budget. So we're under budget, which is not necessarily great in the sense that we need workers and employees to perform our work, and it's still challenging for us, which I think it is for almost everyone I've talked to across the board in different industries. So, but as far as personnel expenses go, for the year, they're up, like I said, $342,000. When you look at the total, we're about 43% of budget, and so we're under budget on those. From a budget perspective, we're in good shape. From getting work done perspective, it's a challenge at times, so.
I saw a billboard a couple of days ago that says, now hiring people that will show up.
For long it's gonna be how hard it is. It really is challenging as far as, I have some friends in other industries, and it's tough across the board, manufacturing, construction, even, you know, you get into IT and professional, and it's really hard in a lot of industries, so. And the next one is our operating expenses. They decreased $13,000 in 2022 compared to 2021. The decrease was primarily due to decreased recycling fees of $177,000, decreased can purchases of $216,000, and decreased insurance expense of $80,000. And I just want to say on those decreases, the can purchases, it's really more timing and also the insurance. With the can purchases, we just did more of them in the 6 months of 2021 versus the 6 months in 2022. So we have cans that have just come in that we're going to pay for, and that number's going up. So that's not really on an annual basis. I'm not convinced we're going to have that big a significant decrease for can purchases. It's just the timing of when we purchase them. That's the same with insurance too. I mentioned it, I think, at our last meeting, but our insurance and the way it's billed is they billed us, they changed their billing cycle, and so it's 7/1 through 6/30. And so in prior years, we were billed for the full year up front. This year, we were billed for 6 months, and then we just got another bill within the last month for the next year. And so some of these are timing differences, and I think it's a little, you know, we just need to understand the reason for those differences. And then the decreased expenses were partly offset by increases in fuel expense of $65,000, in maintenance expense of $117,000, in county interlocal expenses of $105,000, and in other expenses of $173,000. So when we look at this, our total operating expenses are really similar to what they were last year. I think they will increase, and they'll be higher by the end of the year and within the next few months. We'll see those expenses get higher compared to the prior year. But a couple of things in here, like with cans, in 2021, we were paying about $55 a can. In 2022, the ones we just ordered were $62 a can, and that's going to go up. And they're based on petroleum as far as when you make those. And so, but it's not just buying things, it's buying things and then trying to get them here. And we'll talk about some assets here in a few minutes, but it's challenging. We can order equipment and items, but getting it is a different issue. So we're feeling that. As far as the interlocal expenses go, that was primarily due to we started to lease new hook lift trucks, and pay a higher cost on those from the county. Before, we were leasing really old trucks that I think had been pretty much depreciated and were old, and so when we picked up the new trucks, that increased significantly. But when we look at the bottom line number, we're showing revenue less expenses, $191,000 negative this year versus about $7,000 last year. So are there any questions on this as far as operating expenses or really any of this information? We'll talk a little more about some of the categories coming up. So this next graph, it just shows, this is for our basic service. So this is for customers that receive recycling and refuse service in the increase here. And so just to point out, it starts at 84,000 at the graph, but we have a year in the numbers, and then as of 6/30 the numbers. So not a lot of change there, slight increase as we progress along. The next one's fuel. This is interesting to me. You know, you look at 2019 and 2020, relatively stable, not much change there. Started to increase in 2021. Well, I shouldn't say started, it was up about 13%, and so that was a significant increase. And fuel this year so far, we're up about 12% over last year. CNG's up about 17, 18 cents a gallon through June, and diesel's up $1.80 a gallon year over year from June, the first 6 months of 2021 versus 2022. And so diesel's come up. Our side load trucks are CNG, but the hook lift trucks and some of the other trucks we use are, yeah, the rear loader.
Yeah.
Do you know the breakdown of the 600,000, how much of it's?
I'm gonna find you after that. You sure?
Natural
I'm
gas.
just listening to the offer.
I have that, I don't have it memorized, I mean, I can get it.
I'll participate, I'm just listening.
Regarding the email that you sent,
Yes.
I wanted to tell you like this rather than send the email.
Then,
Liberal attendance
policies,
and leave policies.
yeah.
Yanni, are you on? Is that Yanni?
You know what? That's one of the first things that came up in my brain.
I mean, nothing we can do about regulation, there's nothing we can do. I mean, we have to have some, I mean, those liberal attendance.
I'm probably gonna use different terminology than liberal, but I get exactly what you're saying.
That's why I wanted to say it in person.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to maintenance expense, I'll
Yeah.
talk.
Because, the,
Can you mute that?
So, maintenance expense, we look at this, I show 4 years just for historical purposes and to give some context. A lot of
That was there.
last couple of years, but I like seeing context, and I think it helps the board to review where we've been at. Maintenance expense was up about 5% in 2020. It remained relatively stable in 2021. And this year, we're up about a little over 7% on maintenance expense. And we met with Fleet this past week and got some numbers from them, and it's going to be probably 8% they're anticipating for next year. And then part of that's the labor, and then still parts, they're having a challenge getting parts in and ordering it. It's still on backlog with a lot of that.
Can I just ask on maintenance, are we requiring more maintenance, or it's just the cost of the maintenance?
It's mainly the cost, but with that said, we have increased the number of trucks we have. But we've gone in and looked at our average cost per truck, especially as they get older. We want to know that. And I've kind of encouraged, let's keep a few and see if that average cost goes up much. It has not gone up significantly on the older trucks. So we do have more trucks, but it's not really, our average cost per truck has not gone up much since we've gotten more trucks in there. There's been older trucks in the fleet.
Well, good, so this isn't flagging that we have a maintenance issue, it's just,
Yeah, well,
it's just the cost.
and that's a really good question, because we look at it in every month, what are the big costs that drive this? You know, are we replacing an arm? Was there something else with the truck? And we've tried to look at it from that perspective. Is this a year-over-year cost? Is it due to the trucks getting older? Is it due to the number of trucks? And then even what type of model and make is the truck? You know, as we change those, do we see differences too? And so we've tried to look at that and kind of consider that, but it is actually a good question.
Good, I'm glad that we're looking at it that way.
Yeah. Well, I was one that wanted to keep the trucks a little longer and see if the maintenance went up, so I was kind of like, oh, let's look at this and see.
Especially because they weren't selling.
Yes.
They were sitting on the lot, so.
CNG used trucks do not sell very quick. The diesel sells so much better. And so I looked at that, and when they're not selling, and we sell them for a really low price, my thing is if we keep them running at a reasonable cost, we want to keep them, going longer. And then the other thing that's helped us is we started to do that, and then we're having to slow down in getting our trucks. So in hindsight, it's really nice that we built up our fleet a little and kept some of those older ones around to have that capacity.
Yeah.
I wish I could say I knew it was shortage.
Pick them off?
We didn't know that,
No,
but it's a nice thing to have.
Good
Yeah.
move.
This one is the next one is the total tons. This is refuse tons. And the totals at the top, so that's for each year. You can see, the kind of orange, yellow is 2019, the gray is 2020, the darker orange kind of red is 2021, and the blue is 2022. And so we can look at that and we can see the mix of the different, providers that we use here, tons that are going to them. And so when we look at this in total, it's interesting, in 2020, it went up 3%. And then in 2021, through 6 months, it came back down about 3%, and then we're down just a little this year. And so we'll see where we end up on that. You can see ACE, we've used them off and on, and we're currently using them right now. And then Transjordan, and then the transfer station and Salt Lake landfill are both through Salt Lake County that we use. Next up, recycling tons for 4 years, and this trend seems to just stay consistent no matter, when we look at it at different periods over 4 years. The recycling tons continue to come down just a little, not real significant, but decrease year over year. On to the next one. This graph's interesting to me. There's colors, and I've taken out a couple years, but I like leaving 2018 in there just because of the story it tells. So 2018's gray, and that's the gray line item, and what this is recycling cost per ton. And so this is both of our vendors. We have 2 recycling vendors, Waste Management and Rocky Mountain Recycling, and this is their combined, when we look at it, kind of the average cost we're paying per month. But you look at that, and this just shows how volatile it is. And then we'll look at this again a little later in the aggregate recycling costs and what they've done. But I just like everyone to be aware of this and see it. And then when we budget, it's part of the reason I like a fee increase before we get too low on cash, because you see something like this and how volatile it can be. From we were getting paid $10 a ton to paying almost $70 a ton, back to a decrease. We were getting paid again in 2021, and now we're back up to paying almost $20 a ton. And so it's really volatile. It's based on underlying commodities markets. It's interesting to see, but it does encourage us, I think, to keep a cushion in our cash balances when we see something like this. The next one, this is our cash balances history. And it has the numbers up above. We do include our investments in here because they're very liquid in the sense that we can get access to those funds whenever we need them. We keep funds in the Zions investment account and then also PTIF through the state treasurer. But we look at this and the trends, the graphs are really pretty similar year to year. The main things that drive this are when do we pay for our big trucks? And then also, when is our billing cycle? And we bill at the end of the quarter, and so we'll bill the end of March, 1st of April, and the funds come in April, May, and it's that way with other quarters, and so you kind of see that trend. I put this together, and I was kind of surprised because when you look June for 2021 and 2022, the numbers are almost the same, and I thought cash was going to come down, and I went back and looked, and I remembered we paid for our 8 side load trucks in May of 2021, we paid $1.33 million. We have not paid for those yet this year. We would have liked to have paid for them, but they haven't. left one vendor to go to another vendor yet. So really, we look like we're about the same cash. It's not a great comparison as far as those timing payments, because we're gonna owe 1.4 million to one of the vendors, as soon as they ship them to the other vendor. And that would give us a more comparable or equitable look at this. And so I really think when we see this, without that, you go, why are we stressing or asking for a fee increase? But if you think, wow, if we took 1.4 out of there and we're at 8.2 million, that's really a more comparable number. Next one is our capital expenditures. This is what we've had budgeted. 8 side load trucks, what I just mentioned. We had an original purchase price, and then they came back, and we had an increase that we got board approval due to the cost increases of steel. Also 3 light duty trucks, and then 2 front load trucks. And then we carry forward from 2021 2 light duty trucks. When we say light duty trucks, that's like a 1-ton pickup or a 1-ton truck. And so we use those in the trailer program and to tow things. But a couple things about this is those 8 side load trucks, we've had those on order since, last year. They still haven't shipped from Peterbilt. And so I don't know if everyone remembers, but we use 2 vendors. One is for the engine and the chassis, and then the other is for the box on top and the refuse and recycling equipment. And so we use 2 vendors, and they haven't even left the first vendor yet, Peterbilt, and that's where we haven't paid the 1.4 million that we were anticipating that we'd pay by now. And so that's delayed that. The 2 front load trucks, gratefully, we got them in, and they're in use, and we paid for them. The 2 light duty trucks, we ordered those. That's been a long time ago. I started to get mixed up on dates, but we haven't seen any activity, and there's another option, and I think you'll talk about that a little later, Pam, right, in your report, or do you want to?
We could right now, so we have an opportunity, because trucks are so hard to get, because we're competing with markets out there. And so even Peterbilt told us, you're a small fish in a big pond, and so when you come to us wanting 8 trucks, and we have somebody else that wants a big order and is willing to pay a little bit more, so that's why there's a bit of delay there. We did have a price increase that we agreed to, they locked into with our contract. We anticipate that the chassis will be completed and built, hopefully in the next couple months, and then shipped off to get the bodies attached. But the light duty trucks, we have 3 trailer trucks that are quite old. We've been waiting to replace those, and we have an opportunity to shift from Ford to Chevy and kind of change our specs a little bit and have a flatbed versus a regular truck body bed. So it's a little more expensive. They're about 10 grand per truck more. So to look at the overall capital purchases, we will not, right now we don't anticipate exceeding that dollar amount. I checked with Rachel to make sure that we were okay to go ahead and proceed with purchasing. It's still on the state contract. We're still following purchasing policies and procurement. But we do need to pay a little bit more and get at least 2 of these trucks replaced to continue on with the quality of service that we want to have without driving those trucks into the ground, where they're almost at right now. But the good news is, on the flip side, pickup trucks are fetching quite a nice dollar, even if there's over 100,000 miles on a pickup truck. It's amazing what people will pay out there on auction. So we anticipate getting a bit back. I can't remember if you remember the dollar amount that Andy may have mentioned, but it was 30,000, something like that per truck. So, what we might expend over, we're not anticipating exceeding that budget. If something changes, then of course we come back to you and request a budget adjustment hearing. We don't anticipate any need for that right now. If we do, maybe it's October or November preferably, because that's when we're going to have a public hearing anyway. So just wanted you to be aware that we're making those adjustments and trying to be creative and meeting the needs of service.
Any other questions on asset purchasing? Okay. Move on, the next one is certification balances as of June 30th. And these are amounts that we send over to the county. We send a file every fall, usually in September, of customers that are past due. And we send that over to the county, and the amounts that are past due go out on the property tax statement. And so it really helps us out as an organization. And this is just a recap, and you can see how much it helps us. We average a little over $2 million a year going over there. Just it really provides a good avenue for collection. And then the amounts we have are generally, it's $51 a quarter. So it's relatively small amounts as far as collections go, but there's a lot of them. So that process really helps us. Next up is just a summary of refunds. And I just wanted to mention again, refunds, the way we're defining it here is what is paid. It's not necessarily adjustments to accounts. So this is what's been paid out to customers for the 3 months, April, May, and June. And we can see the main categories are there. We have some through Express Bill Pay, but a lot of these we just send checks back to the customer. And we talked about last time, we get customer payment errors somewhere. We've got customers paying us their mortgage, things like that. And we need, on those, as soon as we get collected funds, we want to move quick and get them back their money. But there's just a lot of variety on some of the errors here. Yeah, we've had some where it's been significant for them. So I don't know if there's any other questions. That kind of wraps up the report for the June time period.
Awesome. Does anybody have any more questions for Paul? Thank you, Paul, for doing such a great job and presenting this stuff to us and keeping track of our budget. So critical. All right, let's move to 4.4, annual fraud risk assessment.
Okay, I get to go again on the annual fraud risk assessment. A little background on this, we've had this before, but the Utah State Auditor's Office requires an annual evaluation of an entity's fraud risk and separation of duties. And then we provide the information and their assessment to the board for your review, and then after that review, we'll submit it. And so, as far as this goes, Pam, could we go down to page 2? I think it's the next page, please, if you would, Renee. I forgot you were doing it. This is the one, we've talked about this in the past where we answered no, and we feel like we put mitigating controls in place here. But are the people who are able to collect cash or check payments different from the people who are able to adjust customer accounts? And that answer for us is no, but we have a mitigating control in place. And we talked about this quite a bit because our customer service people, they take payments and they can't adjust accounts. So there was a couple different options, and to provide a review or to have them not do that, which would have required another person always being available pretty much immediately or very quick to do that. And also, if they can't do it, we think that really affects our customer service. I mean, someone calls up, they want resolution. They don't want to talk to another person or say, we'll get back to you. So we allow them to keep doing it, but what we did was we got a report that was generated, and that report's reviewed of adjustments every month. We have someone outside of customer service reviewing that report. And I think it's a good control, and it's helped us, and it still allows us to provide customer service that I think isn't hindered by this. Because from accounting, that's one of the things with finance. Have controls and segregations of duties, and you can live in this ideal world, but you always have to balance it with what's going on the business side and on the customer service.
I love being transferred.
Yeah, that just makes you happy, doesn't it? Or being put on hold until how important you are.
And then you can disconnect it. You've only been on the phone for 45 minutes, so you can do it again.
So we think that helped us out, but that's the one question we answered no to. The others we answered yes. So we can go back, Renee, now. I just wanted to point that out. And so that was number 3 on the basic separation of duties questionnaire, where we answered no. We placed a mitigating control in 2020, and we continue to do that. Also, another thing that we've done this year, and I think it's good for us to review this, it brings up ideas, we look at things we can improve. But on number 7, it says that we promote a fraud hotline, and so we've always had that in our policy manual, but with the new website, we actually put that up on the website on the bottom of the page, and Renee helped us out with that. And so I think we made an improvement there. But really, based on our existing policies and processes and internal controls, we feel like we believe there's adequate separation of duties and internal controls in place to minimize the risk of fraud. I don't think we're perfect. I don't think there's 100% guarantee, and I don't think many organizations can say that. But I do think we really try to minimize that risk. And I feel like based on the scorecard, and you can review that, we're in a low risk for potential fraud. So we have to kind of pay attention to, in the sense we're a relatively small organization, and so when we look at things and try to keep segregation of duties, especially like when people are out of the office, it gets more difficult and that type of thing. But a little bit of background on this, I think the state auditors started this. They were having issues with even organizations smaller than ours. You get some of the water districts and mosquito abatement and that type of thing where it's a few people, and they've had issues where, someone's,
The biggest fraud cases are local districts.
yes,
Throughout the state, and, this has been going on for 20 years, so.
and
There's some major ones that happen, I mean, there's, somewhere people are going to jail and things.
Yeah.
Major amounts.
I know of a couple smaller, well, I shouldn't say small, it's in $100,000, but smaller districts.
We had one that was $1.5 million,
Yeah.
over 10 years.
And so we really want to just have separation of duty and review. And I also work with our employees, because sometimes when you start saying we need to review your work, or someone else needs to sign off on this, if we can get them to view that as a protection to themselves, which it is, because it protects me, it protects Pam, it protects the organization, and it protects every employee, because the bottom line is someone's honest mistake too. And are we going to catch that? It's not just, is there fraud, but are there mistakes or those type of things? And so I think we've done well there, and I hope employees and people understand we do a lot of these things to protect the organization and protect all of us. It's not, we're not, hopefully ever portray a gotcha type of place, but we do want to protect people, and then we have responsibility as far as the funds go in the operation. So, any questions on the annual fraud risk assessment? Okay.
Again, you must be thorough looking at another question. Good job.
I don't know, I'm just tired.
Okay, we're gonna move to 4.5, continue discussions on fee increase as part of the 2023 budget.
And I guess I'm on a roll, man.
Kick it up, Paul, go
Yeah.
for it, yeah.
On this, we wanted to look at, and kind of put a summary together on expenses, and so, we went back and wanted to look, we can always say expenses are increasing, and I think we all agree they are, but just to say that, especially when you're asking for a fee increase, that's nice, but let's get a little more specific. And so I went back and looked at these major categories of expenses for the last 5 years, over the time period kind of we're looking at, and to see what increased, what didn't increase, because I have one on here, recycling actually increased, and then it decreased, and I still left it on there just because I wanted to show that. But this is not all the expenses, but it's our major expenses and our major categories. And so when we look at this, our wages and overtime were $4.2 million in 2018 versus I'm projecting almost $5.8 million in 2022. And so I went and I was looking at that, and I thought, I always like seeing is there relationships, and I went back and looked. And for our equipment operator, the starting wage in 2018 was $17.34 an hour. And for the ones we've hired so far in 2022, the starting wage is $24.19 an hour. So we've gone from $17.34 up to $24.19 an hour. And it's interesting, that percentage is 39.5. It's almost exactly the same percentage as the overall increase. And others, other than equipment operators, have gotten wage increases. But the reason I looked at them was that's by far our biggest component of that.
It's 2/3 of our workforce.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yep. Do we have a wage discrepancy from those who were hired earlier versus those now, or are they all kind of on an even plane?
We've adjusted that as we've gone through time and been aware of that, because you know, you don't wanna be having people that have been loyal and stayed with you making less than people that got hired.
Higher, and that's happening everywhere.
And we've looked at that when we've done our adjustments.
Kind of hates compression.
Melissa Cotter has done a great job in bringing forward a compression matrix, and then a survey basically that each employee filled out to talk about years of experience, years of experience related for their job, and also education, so that employee could move into the compression matrix and move into the percentile of their job. So, it is based on years of experience.
So we're keeping up on that, it's all.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I've never been on a board or an organization, I think it does it better. I've been super impressed by the way that they've really highlighted that, to make sure that we don't have those types of issues.
And we've also gone with the 1734, that was the minimum of the range, and everyone started at that in 2018. That doesn't work anymore, especially with experienced people. So the 2419, we still have a minimum range, but some of the equipment operators we're getting in come with experience, and so we adjust their wage. But we've done that with the employees that have been here too. And so I think hopefully, you know, that's worked out. I think wages are always tough. I mean, especially in this environment, it really makes it tough for some folks. But just going down there, we can look at the wages and overtime, that's the big one. And I went back and looked, and our overtime, I mean, it's come up a little, but it really, that's not the main driver. It's our base wage that really is. And our overtime came up in 2019, and then it's been relatively stable the last 2 or 3 years as far as the overtime goes. But those wages, that does include wages, overtime, and then our temporary labor. And so that would include scrap of the employees there. Next up was fuel. We can see the increase there in the trends. Maintenance, 4 years of activity there. And with those increases, we anticipate that's going to continue to increase. It was interesting to me looking at disposal fees, and they really have been fairly stable. You know, our tons haven't increased significantly, but the disposal fees haven't gone up as much as I would have anticipated or guessed. So, and then we look at recycling, and we talked about that earlier, but this shows the volatility there where it went up. And this year we're projecting about $250,000 for the end of the year, which is you know, $1 million less than 2 or 3 years ago. And so I added those up, those columns, and then also I looked at the cost of a side load truck. $313,000 in 2018, and in 2022, $351,000 is our projection, which you'll see. Hopefully that holds. And I projected that out. If there's 8 side load trucks, what would be the cost difference there? And so down below, what I was trying to do is just seeing if we look at these major categories, where are we at? And so I took the total of those costs, the $14,411,212 in 2022 minus what we did in 2018. The $12,561,71, the increase or the projected increase that I have there is almost $1.9 million. And then on the side load trucks, did the same thing. Projected increase is about $308,000. Added those two together, got $2,159,000. And then I just divided those by the houses we serve in our base service. They're $86,145, and that equals about $25 per house. And like I said, this is our main category. There's still other categories that did increase, but this is something we can point to and say, hey, these are what's really driving us as far as our costs.
Yeah, just point out the $25, that's an annual increase per home per month, or per home. If you break that down per month, it's just over $2 per home per month. Another, 2018 was the last fee increase that we had of $2.25, and that's, you know, important of starting that point of the increased cost. 2019, even though recycling got up to a 1.2 expenditure, we had over $1 million underexpend in personnel. So it was a double-edged sword, because we didn't have enough staff. We were, you know, really scraping by to make sure we could get the services, But yet we were able to absorb that increased cost. Just 2 points, I wanted to make sure.
What,
I have a
somebody-
question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so, quick question. How many houses were we serving in 2018 versus what we're serving now in 2022? And I guess the reason I ask the question is that our costs, I want to see how much our costs went up as it relates to also the number of homes that we're serving.
Oh, there we go, thanks.
So there we have the end of 2019. I'm not sure what, I would guess that would have been fairly similar, maybe a little under 2018, but I'm not sure. I could find that number, I mean, I can give it.
Around 85,000.
Yeah, around 85,000, I would think.
Now we're at 80.
So can we correlate the cost increase as it relates to the number of residents, or are there cost efficiencies that it's not just a dollar for dollar? We know that adding a house costs this much to the district, or adding a new area, or a new location, or a new neighborhood.
Yeah, I don't think it's new growth. I mean, you look at it and we're up maybe 1,000 or 2,000. I think it's really more the cost of labor, the cost of maintenance. Those types of things are what's driving these costs. I don't think it's, we have picked up, I should say, in one area we picked up, it's not our base service here is green, but that's a fee-based, yeah, that's a fee-based service, and so that really is outside of this. But I don't know if I have a different perspective on that.
No, I would think that there's not a direct correlation, between adding homes. I mean, yes, it does increase costs, but we also get the revenue to help offset that. Hope that answers.
And I did, just on that, your totals, I mean, that's a 14% increase over 4 years. That averages, I mean, if you just do the raw math, it's 3.6 per year, which is kind of what I think you use 3% for your long-term projections.
We used to.
So they're not, it's not terribly outrageous. The thing is, you have to keep, obviously you have to even keep revenues to match that to keep providing the services or change your paradigm.
Scott, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm just thinking as we look at going out to our customers and talking about raising costs, is it possible for us to put in that calculation areas that we've been able to have some cost savings? Or, to show them that we've looked at maybe innovative ways of doing some things, so we've been able to reduce the cost here and offset some of this, because I think we need to somewhat mirror the process that our customers go through as we have inflation. They have a few areas that they have to start cutting some costs and tighten their belt, and that's not ordinarily something that the government does. And I would like to be able to show that if we have areas that we can show that.
So improved efficiencies and ways to try to absorb. Okay, we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, for example, you had talked about, we're keeping some of the older trucks and maintaining them and trying to see if that, gives us some cost savings. I just think if we highlight that as part of this discussion, that it's gonna be a lot easier to look at the numbers and explain, why we need an increase if that's what we need.
Yeah, I agree. And I was gonna say, one thing, I agree with you, and we can look at that, I think it's a good idea. On some things we do, we know we really feel like there's a cost savings or a benefit, but it's hard to quantify at times. I look at things like we put cameras in the trucks, and that has helped us, I think, fairly significantly on claims and accidents and those type of things. But what did we avoid by putting those in? I don't know for sure, but I think that's one too. Sometimes you can get hard numbers when you do analysis, and on the trucks and those type of things, and other times you do it and you feel like there's a benefit and a cost savings, but it's difficult to quantify.
I think a lot of these items you have quantified and you have shown where it's an advantage to us in prior reports.
Yeah.
And so we can take a look at those too. They're usually spelled out. And I think you've done a very good job of justifying and also explaining where we're saving and where our expenses are going higher. It's just a matter of taking a look at those reports.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, Scott, and we've had this discussion as a board too, is it's a little bit further in the presentation, but it's the fee comparison listed in order highest to lower kind of thing, and the services. So the question we always address as a board, and will continue to need to address as a board, is do we want to continue to provide this level of service because this is the cost? Or do we decrease the level of service, which in turn decreases cost, but you lose service? And so always when we've done surveys with our residents, they haven't wanted to decrease the service. They were more amenable to keeping the service and paying an extra couple bucks a month versus losing some of the service. So that's in my view, that's some of the options. Here's what it costs to run the services that we provide, and so if we want to not provide those services, then obviously there would be a cost reduction, but then there's a service reduction.
Right, but I also, as a citizen and a customer, if the rationale to raise prices, if that rationale is that, well, Sandy City charges more than we do, or Midvale charges more than we do, that type of analysis, I mean, I think it's a good analysis to make, but if the request for an increase is justified by what other people are charging, as a customer or a citizen, that kind of irritates me.
No, I agree 100%, and that is never the intent of this. It's just to go, wow, where are we in comparison with other people? But it also is to show that the reason our fees are at this is because we do provide much more service. Like,
Right.
I don't want to throw Riverton under the bus, I'm sorry, Riverton, but sometimes we look at this and go, how can Riverton do it for $10 a month? There's no way that you could cover your costs. And it's because they subsidize with other things. This is just what's shown on the bill as garbage collection. And we just don't have that luxury of, it's just, this is what our costs are to provide this type of service. So we do those kind of comparisons. Even sometimes as a council person, I get, calls from people in Harriman. They're like, why is Riverton so cheap? Why are you guys ripping this off? You know, it's like, well, let's really truly understand. It's not a direct comparison. This is broccoli and peaches. It doesn't compare, you know? So that's.
They definitely don't.
I know, right? So, so that's why we do this comparison list, not for exactly what you're talking about and say, well, we could go up here because this company is doing this much. It's to say, okay, this is what they're charging me, this is what we're providing, how are we in comparison to that? So, no, I agree 100%, but we wouldn't want to be going, oh, yeah, look at, these guys are at $30, let's bump it up to that.
Right. Yeah, they raised their fees, so we had to raise ours.
Yeah, for sure. That is not the intent, but thank you for mentioning that. Okay, sorry, jumped in the middle of your presentation.
You're fine, you'll go to the.
Can I?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Eric.
This is Eric. Sorry. Sorry to go back to this, but the reason I was asking about increases in numbers is my community in particular, Magna, we have thousands of homes going in the next couple of years, thousands of residences, and I can't imagine that would have a non-impact on this district. I imagine it's going to have a significant impact on this district and what and how we provide services, at least in my area. And so my question was more around, what does it cost for us to set up more homes in that regard? And are our fees sufficient to cover that? Or will there be additional costs in setting up larger areas in the future?
Good question. So most of the, new homes that are coming up in Magna are on private roads and private developments. So many of those we will not be servicing. They will be.
The Ivory Homes communities? I know DR Horton is, but there's 3 massive Ivory Homes master plan communities going in. 2 of them have already
Yes.
started, one of them's in planning.
Yes, so as long as they're on public roads, single-family home up to a fourplex, then we can service them, right? So yes, those are in account. As far as doing an analysis of what it costs to bring on a new home, we could certainly do that. It will vary by area, of course, because it depends on how far away the home is from our current location where the trucks are parked, and then to the dumping facility. So of course, there would be variance there. And to say, does our $17 a month cover cost? If you look at the, $17 a month, annual, sorry, I'm trying to think about this. So no, the answer is the $17 a month does not cover our cost. I think that this analysis that Paul provided does illustrate that.
So some of the initial startups with a new home, the cans are paid for when the homes are built and initially put out. Where you would get into significant change is where you need to add a truck and a driver, or a set of drivers or whatever, because, you could run in that with Harriman, where we need to reconfigure things, because there were so many being added that eventually you have to add the equipment, so your fleet goes up, your payroll goes up. That's, hopefully mostly offset by the fees.
But it should be, right? That's the way we
That's
calculate it, is that so that we understand that the cost of service of each home is this much per month. And over time, as inflation hits us 3.5% a year, then we have to bump that up and roll it up. But it's anticipated that that's simply the cost of service per home. Even kids buying a new truck would be calculated into cost of service per home, right?
Yes. Okay. Yes. The capital. Okay, we're gonna go to the next page. So, and to your point, Board Member Little, the point of these next illustrations are just to show that costs have gone up industry-wide. So the comparison is strictly for garbage and recycling collection services by municipality. So, in June, I brought forward the fees that existed, which are on that, column to the right, July 21 fees. That's what was in existence before each municipality adopted their, new fiscal year budget as of July 1, 2022. That's the left column. And each municipality is off to the far left. So the ones that are highlighted are those that did raise their fees specifically for this service. And again, it's just to illustrate that, you know, we're not the only ones feeling that inflationary impact of the cost going up. And somehow you need to cover that cost. So that's the point of this illustration as well as the next one. The thing to note is that over to the side, the right side, and I know many board members have seen this before, but it's basically anything that's outstanding from us that municipalities may receive. Like, for example, all of the cities that are in the Transjordan do receive a reduced tipping fee for garbage, and they pay half the rate that we do. Currently, we pay $37 a ton. It just went up July 1. So the Transjordan municipalities pay half that rate. So they can have kind of a cost break there, which may be why their fees are a little bit less. But that's important to note. Salt Lake City does receive a dividend from the Salt Lake Valley landfill because they are part owner. So Salt Lake County and Salt Lake City both get a per ton dividend at the end of each year. And I can't remember exactly how much that is.
I don't mean to interject right there, but if you think about that, if we were paying half that, so this year our projected is just about $4 million in disposal fees. So if we were paying half that, that's the total projected increase.
$50 a month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, it's just, that's substantial.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So the board in June did talk about a $2.50 per home per month increase. And so the point again is just to illustrate where we would land in that. If you wouldn't mind scrolling to the next one. we can see that we would basically land with third. It'd be $19.50 a month. So we would be just above West Jordan and below Murray City. Salt Lake City, just so you know, they withheld fee increases for 7 years prior to 2021, and they went up $3 per home per month in 2021, and then they jumped another $4. So I think the question came up in June of what if we delayed? So if we delay, that just means a larger fee increase in the future because we lose that time value of money. So I just wanted to make sure I show you the illustration that we're not alone. And I think you as municipalities are experiencing that. Many of you had truth in taxation hearings recently, and I hope you're recovered from that. I know it's a really lengthy process and can be very difficult. For us as staff to come before you to request a fee increase as part of our 2023 budget is not taken lightly. It's been 5 years since we've come before you, and it was approved.
Madam Chair, if the $2.50 number, I don't think is disconnected from any reality. For example, I was looking at the first sheet of the select cash expenses that Paul put together. In 2018, our expenses were $12.5 million, roughly. They're now $14.4 million projected for this year. I'm not very good with math, but I do have a calculator on my computer. I figured that was a 1.13% increase, 13% increase, 13.1% increase, and that would, if you extrapolated our fee of $17 a month, that would put us at $19.21, which of course is not quite $2.50, but I kind of like that idea of taking our expenses and extrapolating what the fee increase would be for us to meet those expenses. And of course, we need to consider startups, and obviously we need to make sure our citizenry knows that we're doing as much as we can to tighten our belts. But I kind of like that 250 number because it seems tied pretty closely to our actual expense increase since 2018.
Yeah, I actually did it from the fee increase of 14%.
Yeah.
That was that gross number, which matches, well, I mean, and puts us in the Salt Lake was also 14. There were some smaller ones that the other cities did until you get down to the ones that were real bargains, and they, then you're 50%, it's 2/3 increase in your fees to start covering things. Or the next page is the one that's always interesting when you see the services comparison. The landfill vouchers, I think that's one that we probably need to emphasize a little bit.
Yeah.
I've got the scrap program. I understand all the whys and wherefores. I don't think a lot of our public really understands why we're doing things that way. Because you still get let's go back to the old way. But there may be, the vouchers is one way to handle that. There may be some other alternatives to do that. If you add in our curbside green, then we're almost exactly the same in every single category as Salt Lake. Personally, I like that it's an option, and all those who wish to and want to can, but you're not kind of compelled to do that. Some people don't have, especially in our area, we've seen a lot of people move away from cutting grass every week. They just don't have it anymore, and other things where they don't need the green. So I like that as the optional service of glass, green, and some of the other things that we provide, I think is nice. But we're not an outlier, but we are a little bit of a premium service, and I think most of our customers have said repeatedly that they like that. They like Christmas tree pickup. They like leaf bag programs. They like the things that we do.
The other thing too is if you look at the landfill category right there, there's 4 different things on ours that we use. And that's, to your point, Scott, that would be good to highlight, is that we definitely have done everything possible to say, hey, where is a facility that we can use that's closest so we reduce costs? So we're not driving trucks just to a certain location, but we go, oh, we could dump there, let's negotiate with that company so we can dump there and reduce costs. So I think you've done a really great job of, you know, reducing costs by looking at different avenues where we can even dispose of.
And I think that's the message we need to get out, is that, you know, we're doing this to try and make it more economical, and we're doing this, but we can't do it all here, so we need to ask you guys to help us.
Yeah, thank you, yeah,
Good point.
absolutely.
That was the question too, of bits versus bytes, right? Do we do just a little tiny bit each year, so it's not so cost, hurt, you know, the 5-year mark that we do? And that's something that is more of a policy or a concept for each entity to look at when they're in local districts.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with property taxes, that becomes more difficult, right? But we're dealing with fees here, but you're looking at lots of different, basically the same concept. Do you do just little tiny bits every year, so it's just a consistent thing that we're meeting, your, cost of living and those type of things? Or do we wait and then have to take a bigger bite in 5 years like we're doing now? That's something that as a board, we probably ought to look at and consider. Is it easier to go a little tiny bit? Because we seem to be consistent, you know, $2.50, 5 years later, we're going up again. We could probably do 50 cents each year, make that much more palatable.
Yeah,
Well,
we
just
talked
a
about
concept to
that.
think about as a board.
But we also were gonna have a fee increase almost 2 years ago, remember? And then,
Yes.
and then we
Yes.
just, again, adopted different
Mhm.
policies or looked at different ways of trying to stretch it longer, so we didn't have to.
So,
Being very creative.
I apologize for not getting this in your packet, but I thought I would, have it here up on the screen. This is what we reviewed in June, to look at, you know, that, you know, $2, the scenarios, basically the fee increase scenarios. And we looked at $2 per home per month, what that would look like for our cash going forward. Paul, do you want to explain the top box there, that table at the very top, and then?
Yeah, and as far as this goes, it shows, we're just trying to project cash here. And so, using our revenues and expenses, and then the beginning cash, we add in the revenues minus expenses, adjust for non-cash expenses, which are like depreciation. We minus out capital expenditures, which are a negative there. And then the third line from the bottom, that ending cash and investment balance, that's what our cash at year-end was. For 2019, 2020, we really didn't see much of a decline. 2021 started to see a decline. And then we're doing, we move on over, we see 2022, and when we did this, we were projecting $7.3 million at the end of the year. And so we are projecting that will decrease, you know, fairly significant over the next 2 or 3 years as far as our cash burn rate, and as that goes down. But when we look at this, we're also looking at cash over operational expenses. There's a percentage there under that line. And then we have a net OPEB liability that we record. It's not, we don't pay that, but it's an actuarial number that we get and record that, and so we put that there. But I guess big picture here, we've talked about what's driving this. We do anticipate cash will decrease. I'm gonna put together a new one of these, and go through July on actual and see where we're at on this, and see, I think we're still gonna be pretty similar to what this shows. And so we're just trying to look at cash here, not so much the bottom line, revenues less expenses, but what do we think the cash balance at the end of the year is going to be.
So I wanted to make sure this was up, because I know we have Board Member Little that is new to us, and anybody that wasn't able to attend last month, or in June, to be able to see this illustration. So, just to recap, that the board did set a policy that they did not want to get, they wanted to have a year-end cash balance of 20% to sustain. And just so you know, that 4.8 million that's projected at the end of next year doesn't quite cover 3 months of expenditures. Did I say that right, Paul?
Yeah.
And that's the tricky part. My personal opinion is that should be higher, but when you go, that gives us 3 months of operations before you have to quit collecting. You have to do some pretty draconian steps to keep providing some service, and, I don't think we really,
I would rather not. Please. So, and then the other thought was, in looking to the future, when is a 5% year-end cash balance gonna hit, which if you look at it, we'd be close to that in 2024. So to try to sustain in 2023 and going forward, that would be the thought if we come with a proposed fee increase, for 2023. Now, in that illustration that Paul put together of the cost increases since 2018, you would notice that it's projected 2022. We do not have projected 2023 cost increases because we're still evaluating compensation, salary, wages, things of that nature, and then any cost increases related to fuel maintenance. We have some thoughts that'll come up in my report of how we're gonna try to right-size our resources to where we can actually reduce some costs, well, I should say, shift some annual expenditures over to resources that we need. I'll get into that later, but I don't know if you have any more questions on this, but right now, our proposal coming into September would be to include that $2.50 monthly fee increase. It's a proposed budget. You can certainly give us direction at that time. If the direction is to, say go ahead and get out to the municipalities and start educating, we can do that.
I think everybody expects that when you see your truck go by and collect your garbage and knowing what gas is, everybody's paying that additional gas and labor costs. I don't think it's gonna be a tough sell. I think people feel like getting their garbage picked up once a week for $17 a month is a real steal.
Yeah, I think people expect it too. I think the hard thing is the burdens that everyone's feeling on everything. Everybody, every tax goes up, this fee went up, this goes up, and that becomes really burdensome on the public. But understanding it and accepting it are two different things sometimes too. And we don't know, we might hit 2025 and gas prices will be
Back down.
we just don't know it. So maybe this 250 might even extend, just like the last one did, a little bit longer than we had hoped, but it's just a guessing game at that point.
Madam Chair, I just want to know that Board Member Barney had to drop off, and then Board Member Sharkey does have a question or her hand up.
Perfect, thank you. Go ahead, Cindy.
I guess I want to recognize Pam and her administration for managing this budget during these last tumultuous years. It's my sense is that you've really been very careful to budget conservatively and to manage your money the best that you could. And you deserve recognition for that. I really appreciate it. And even in this presentation of a rate increase, I accept, as one board member, I accept that an increase is indicated. In June, we sort of debated what the right increase might be. And I'm just curious, Pam and Paul, in these projections, has anything changed since June? Thanks for throwing this slide back up. It was 2 months ago. In these 2 months, the most exacerbating factor for inflation, of course, has been gasoline, and that is trending down quite nicely. You brought up CNG and diesel, and I'm no expert there. Are there any trend lines on those costs which would indicate that there's improvement there to the extent that your projections might change in this slide that we're looking at right now? So I guess I'm looking to find out from administration. I felt like in June, administration was sort of saying, maybe we could deal with a $2 rate increase. And I felt like it was the board members that were sort of guiding toward 250. And I just wonder if anything's changed in the last 2 months as the economic outlook. There's still a lot of uncertainty, but there are some things that are trending. So I'm just curious from administration's point of view. Do you have a clear glide path here? Is anything more clear that would lead you to recommend one versus the other on the rate increase?
I appreciate the question. One thing that has come up is we did meet with the Salt Lake County Fleet Director and his team last Friday to get projections for 2023 of costs for maintenance and costs for fuel. Right now, they are looking at a possible 8% increase for the hours, basically what we would be charged for maintenance. And looking out on the markets, it's still very competitive. Their rate is lower than, say, a private company where we would take our trucks to. And then I think you may understand that we save money by having fleet right here where we park our trucks. So we save dollars and cents for transport. So yeah, we are looking at cost increase going forward in 2023. And with the proposed budget, we will include those increased costs. So I know that I was the one that said something about $2 per home per month increase being very conservative. To be honest with you, I was thankful that you as a board talked about $2.50 per home per month increase, especially after we met with fleet and what we're looking at for the price of purchasing trucks. I don't see those particular commodities coming down in 2023.
Nor their parts for maintenance.
Right, parts.
Or just, and the shipping of those parts is gonna suck it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked them specifically, what do you see as far as the supply chain? And they're like, it's bad.
It's bad.
Not, they don't anticipate, this was a couple people's opinion, but they didn't anticipate it getting better in the next 6 months. They were thinking it was probably a year out. So I think as far as fuel goes, to me, that one, I'm kind of hoping we hit a high point this year, but I don't know. And even then, you know, it's still significantly higher than it has been in the past. But maintenance, I'm pretty confident we're going to be around 8%. And then salaries and wages, we're looking at that one, but I think that's going to go up too. So I really haven't seen anything significantly. The trucks, and when we talk about purchasing trucks, and we got these 2 Chevrolet trucks, and what we had to pay for them, that encourages me to go for a little higher number when we talk about purchasing assets. So we'll see what happens on some of these, but I really do think maintenance is up, salaries and wages are going to be up, truck purchases are going to be up. Fuel, we'll see what happens, and that part of fuel to me is it was just so high this year, but it can always go higher, you know, but hopefully it doesn't, we'll see.
Thank
You know,
you. That's helpful. Thanks.
If you look at fuel on an annual basis, it always tends to dip this time of year. And I know that there are people trying to say, hey, we're doing great, our fuel price is going down. And I'm not sure that that's any more than a reflection of less demand this coming year.
There's always follows political cycles too. It gets not nice and ugly, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
And then I just want to say thank you to Board Member Sharkey for that compliment. I really appreciate that. I have a great team, as well as your support as a board is really beneficial. I want to thank you all as well.
Okay, what do you need from us as far as direction? You have enough information, direction, questions to move forward?
I think we do. We're planning on moving forward, and we'll plug in the $2.50 per home per month increase in the proposed budget. And then you can see the actual increase when we come forward with the proposal, because we will have the salary market adjustments or recommendations in there as well, and then the fleet, as well as everything else.
Okay, awesome. Thank you everyone for all your questions and direction on that. Do you want me to update the waste and recycling fee comparison? Is that what's next?
That's what we did. We're done.
We're done.
Yeah, we're done with that.
Okay,
So
so 4.6 general manager's report.
yes, thank you. I've mentioned that, you know, Melissa's doing her analysis, so for the September meeting, just in short, we will be back, we'll meet with the board officers for the pre-board meeting on September 15th. That'll involve Melissa to go through her whole analogy, her methodology, I should say, of how she's looked at the markets and compared with our salaries. And then we will come before you on September 26th with that proposal. And then I mentioned also in our evaluation, looking at FTEs for the proposed 2023 budget. I've talked before about the 3 FTE driver positions. Now I'm looking at a possible lead equipment operator with the 2 equipment operators, so a total of 3 FTE for scrap. And then there's 2 other positions that we have been, we've hired temporary part-time employees for these particular positions. One is the safety coordinator. There has been a big need to expand that position to include emergency preparedness and planning. It has fallen under me and our operations manager and a supervisor in the past, and we need help with that portion. For the safety coordinator position, we've had that in place for the past couple of years as a part-time, and really it has expanded because of all the training materials that we need in place and the at least twice a month trainings with employees, as well as going out to safety tailgates every Monday. So we feel as staff that we can justify that position as full-time. That position, as well as the next one I'm going to describe, is also on Melissa's docket to evaluate on salary surveys out there. Understanding that we're already paying a part-time wage for that, so there will be an increase to that, but it won't be as just a flat, we're already paying for it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. The next one is a data specialist and program support. We have a lot of data entry that's taking place here in our organization, and it's kind of spread out. The vision of this is that currently we have this position that's mainly been supporting scrap. We have a need for them to expand it district-wide and looking at all programs, collecting that data, and basically this position will report to Renee. It's more of an administrative position. And Renee, I'm going to put you on the spot, but if you wouldn't mind expanding on the vision of this whole concept.
Yeah, you bet. So currently, we've got a part-time team member, employee that is entering data to help me out with the scheduling, the routes for the scrap, et cetera. And what I've discovered over this past year is we have a lot of information that's coming in, from tonnage reports to operational reports that our operations team needs to run the operations every day. And our managers and our operations supervisors, they're in there doing it as best as they can. And we've got 52 reports up here that have similar information. Like we need to streamline this to get it into one spot. And so I envision, I'm pretty excited about it, a MIS management information system portal to where operations can just go in and find that information and it's updated for them. So then they can get out and manage their team and help out where folks need. And so again, we already have the part-time position in there that's helping joining the scrap right now. And thankfully, I think that the new website has already helped in some of that reporting that he's having to do. So just looking to streamline that, make that more efficient, again, so our leaders can get out there and be more involved with the day-to-day operations.
Help with efficiencies.
Yeah,
Really.
efficient.
Yeah, managing the day-to-day. So to look at how are we going to cover these costs, well, for the 3 FTEs for scrap, we've been leasing the hook lift trucks from Salt Lake County Fleet, and as Paul mentioned, this year that cost went up. Well, we can't put we can't put the butts in the seats, so we want to reduce those truck numbers from 16 to 10 because we don't need them. We can't. I wish we needed them. We could probably go back to the way we used to provide that service, but I don't anticipate being able to do that for a very long time, if ever. So we would reduce that particular cost expenditure and right-size the resource or the funding for that and put it towards labor for those 3 FTEs. As far as what does that look like dollars and cents wise, we'll put that together for you as part of the 2023 proposal. And then again, as I mentioned, there will be a slight cost increase for those shifting the labor from the part-time safety data to full-time, and we'll bring that forward as well. So we're trying to keep any kind of cost increase associated with labor as low as we possibly can. Any questions on that? I'll move into the health insurance. Ashley and I met with our broker, and Paul was a part of that meeting as well, to look through our benefit package for employees. This includes health insurance and dental. And we do receive a premium rebate every year. This year, we're going to receive just over $41,000 of a rebate, and that's how we perform on our claims, basically. It's similar to risk management and the trust. If we can keep our claims low and cost and in number, we get a rebate back. So for this year, we get the just over 41,000. So in looking at our annual increases for premium, what our broker has told us is to right now budget for a 5% premium increase. We do receive our health insurance, dental, and so forth from PEHP, Public Employee Health Providers. And then you can see the difference would be about $65,000 increase annually. We're hoping that NFP can negotiate a little bit lower cost. Dental also will be about 5%, which is just about $4,500. There is a new benefit that we would like to add, and it's basically replacing the existing employee assistance program with a more robust program where employees have a little more access to resources for mental health, emotional health, and well-being. My thought behind here, the method, no pun intended, to the madness, is that we put more money into helping all of us cope with anything that might come up. And I really think that this would help with, the use of sick leave, basically the ability to be here and work on a day-to-day basis is the thought there. So there will be an increased cost to that, but we will be discontinuing the current program, which is $3,200, and the new program is just about $16,000, excuse me. And so the actual increase is about $13,000. So that's the thought there. And then we also want to add the teledoc consultation. So the thought here is that this could reduce ER visits, Instacare visits, that they can actually call or get on the web and talk to a physician and go through some of these minor health issues that somebody might have that will save the cost of a claim going into the hospital or so forth. So it's about $6,800 more. So I put the total increased cost about $89,000 less the rebate. So the total increase, just looking at these, understanding, is just over $47,000. So this will all be included in the 2023 budget. Anything else, Paul or Ashley, that I might have missed? I know that we are running late. So. That's it.
Food
I'm
waste.
sorry.
We don't have the food waste.
Oh, yes, sorry, yes. Oh, yes, the food waste. Thank you so much, Jerry. I'm just ready to go. Okay, so the food waste pilot program has been running since July 6th. It's going to end on September 28th. This has been happening in East Mill Creek and Canyon Rim. There's two options that the folks that are participating, and just so you know, there's 281 subscribers. It is a sign up for service. It's been sponsored through federal dollars on a grant for Wasatch Resource Recovery, as well as Momentum Recycling. Momentum is the one that's been providing the collection service on a Wednesday. The homeowners have an option of a 16-gallon can or a 4-gallon bucket. The majority of the subscribers use a bucket, versus the can. And it gives you a little breakout of what's been collected so far. The set out rate is 63%, so two-thirds, almost two-thirds are putting out their cans, and this is a weekly collection. So Momentum is looking to continue this program going forward and keeping it a subscription. The question that we've been asked and we've been evaluating is that does Woodward want to sponsor this service similar to a subscription program we have for green and glass? Right now, it's so early and we don't have a lot of information. So my thought, if you as a board are okay with this, is that we let Momentum take this ball and run with it. And they plan on charging a fee, so it'll be $13 a month for the bucket and $18 a month for the 16-gallon can, if residents want to continue this. So my thought is let them run. We can evaluate as they go. We do have an option to jump in later on, once we see how popular this becomes, and collaborate and contract with them to kind of sponsor the service.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Does this cost us anything?
Right now, it does not. And if we were to partner with them, it would be similar to how we do glass, in that we basically would charge an extra amount to the resident for the billing process, and then we can evaluate, do we want to be the ones to provide the can or the bucket? And so there would be a price, but of course we would cover that with the fee to the resident. So it's such a rush right now. I would say that we're really not ready to partner with them yet. And like I said, it's so early, I really want to see if more people sign up, especially when there's a fee. Right now it's been free. Right now it's free for the residents. So no questions, or?
I think we need to wait.
Yes, I agree.
You're good with that, that's how we'll.
Yeah, and I think my comment would be to throw this big unknown in the midst of even trying to contemplate a rate increase and not knowing exactly, you know, what the startup and logistical expenses are going to be long-term. Man, that, I really think we need to go very slowly on this. I'm not saying, this isn't to say this wouldn't be a great service, but it scares me a little bit to move forward quickly would scare me on this.
I agree.
Good to hear, thank you, I agree.
Okay, no one else has any comments or questions? We don't have a need for close, right? Okay, does anyone on the board have anything else they'd like to bring up or share at this time? Okay, so for our next, board meeting, we'll be going over the 2023 proposed budget and fee schedule, and of course, Pam's general manager report. And other than that, I think that we just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for catching that, Sherry.
You're good. Thanks, Pam.
Thank you, Ed. Take care, drive safe.
But I didn't vote on the.
It's all coolers out there.